Yes, I've only been working on only one photography project for the past 5 years. And I've actually come to love it because I'm working with my mother. And yes, I know not every relationship could sustain a project like this because it has been years that we've been working on it. Obviously, we're not working on it on like a daily basis, but I can say that this specific project has given us opportunities to really deepen our practice and also just getting to know each other way better. Because now that I've been focusing only on this one project, it has been easier for me to really dive deeper into it, do some self-reflection and understand better and how can I actually develop the whole project. And yes, it has been uncomfortable, but let me rewind how it all started. I did my exchange in KBK, the Royal Academy of the Art in The Hague in 2017, which then led me to stay there as a permanent student in their documentary photography class. And I did this decision because I knew that the university that I was studying in Finland wasn't really providing me the knowledge or the education that I was really looking for. But starting my studies in KBK was really quite the shock for me. I was not aware of the pace, the intensity that the course would have, and I was really not prepared for it, even if people were telling me that this is what it would be like. So the stress was real when I started studying there. One thing that is definite in KBK was the fact that they would dig, and they would dig deep to find out why were you doing what you were doing in your projects. I had a project where I just wanted to photograph young kids at a kindergarten. The academy was definitely not taking it. They were telling me how I should really rethink my idea through, really conceptualize it and find new ways and maybe even methodologies to dive deeper in the whole subject. And when I was introduced to different methodologies, I was more able to produce new imagery and really experiment with what I was actually doing in my projects, in all of them. Not only in the project that I'm actually about to explain in this video. I already knew that I loved photographing people, but I would say that it was very much underlined when I got to the academy. And I think it had a lot to do with the practices that was provided for us, also the community and the discussion around our images, which I feel we still don't have in Finland. And it's also something that photographers are definitely missing because we are used to working alone and there is not a lot of people or a sense of community in our lives where we can really share our ideas and discuss about them openly. My project with my mother started at the end of my studies, which was in 2019. We were given the final assignment. We had to come up with an idea for our written part, the thesis, but also for a visual project that would be then exhibited in the academy, in the premises, and this was called the graduation exhibition show. I have to say that I struggled a bit with this. I did think about the topics that I wanted to present to my class, and we had to present some sort of a tangible idea that would be very clear for the teachers and also for us to continue and to graduate, because this was the final step in the graduation process. But KBK always emphasized and really tried to get the actual ideas out of us. So if you would have one idea, they would ask, why are you choosing this idea? Why is this idea worthy? Can you explain this idea to your mother or a family member? They would always sort of dig deeper and deeper to really come up with a unique outlook on the topic that you chose. In the midst of trying to find out and figure out what I wanted to produce, the first step was to look into my own interests. And I already knew that I was really interested in the beauty of things, aesthetics, details. And at the age of 32, I was going through a phase where I was doing a lot of self-reflection, who I was, what aging meant for me, how I saw myself as a woman, and also how I was mirroring the women in my life, especially my mother. And I started to get into questioning what were the day-to-day activities or sort of rituals that women performed in order to look a certain way or present themselves in a certain way. And because I was also a bit lazy, I chose my mother to be the topic of this because I had an easy access to her and I knew that whatever ideas or plans I had, she would be ready to execute them with me, and she didn't really question any of it. And I thought that just to get me going and get me started, I needed to have like an easy access to this whole topic. So I started to research the topic through myself and also through my mother. I quickly understood that everything that we were performing on a weekly basis, maybe even day-to-day basis, came out to be, for me at least, almost like rituals that women perform. And we're not always even aware of them. When I started to look into this, it started to be more of these actions around beauty and the way we decided to be portrayed by others, by our surroundings. But who were we performing for? So first I started to really document myself, my beauty rituals, doing my nails, doing my makeup, putting on self-tanner. I wanted to visually show what it felt like wearing a bra, which for me felt like being wrapped up in a wire, because for everyone who actually wears a bra knows that it can be quite painful to do. And then after I had turned the camera on myself, I started to photograph my mother, what beauty rituals she had, and how maybe if I'd inherit some of these rituals, because I was growing up with her and being exposed to all these rituals. And this just really opened up so many doors around this topic. I became quite overwhelmed, and I wasn't really sure whether this idea was something that I really wanted to continue going into, because as an artist and a photographer, it's quite hard to be vulnerable through your work, because it means that whenever you would get feedback, the feedback would inherently always be directed at you. Even if it wouldn't be intentional, the feedback is still going to be about you, because you yourself are in the pictures. So it was quite natural for me to choose to then just stick with photographing my mother and just experimenting with portraits about her. And then I peeled the next layer, because I understood also that even if I'm really into aesthetics and beautiful things and just the exterior, so to say, I also understood that it would be left only there, really on the surface level. So I needed to go deeper and understand more about the character who my mother actually was. And the first roles that we started to build together, in the beginning mostly I was actually building the pictures, but the first roles were about femininity and being very feminine. And through that, it also developed into being about sexuality and older women and their sexuality. And I remember thinking this was groundbreaking. This series is really touching the unspoken topics in our society, and I didn't feel any shame, and I didn't really feel like I would have to really discuss these topics with my mother, because again, my mother was really just so happy that she could help me out to graduate the academy. I remember thinking, okay, I'm just gonna expose her to everything that comes to my mind, all the ideas that I have, without really questioning how much agency she herself had in the pictures. And after a while, it started to feel embarrassing in a way for myself. It felt like I was not respecting her as a person. And it really felt like I was exposing her to everything without really questioning whether she was okay with that. And then I tweaked the series again. I started to photograph her more through characters. First, it was through really feminine roles, because my thesis was exactly about that, about older women in our society and how the visual culture was not really showing women as they were in that age. We slowly moved from feminine figures and feminine characters into more masculine roles, but also into more upon her being someone else than herself. And whenever I was building roles that were more on the masculine side, I remember feeling, and you can see it in the pictures, that she was very much uncomfortable in these specific roles. And we actually discussed about this later on, and she said that she hated dressing up as a man and she hated putting up on suits, because she herself felt that she was very feminine within herself, and coming out as someone else, even if she knew that it was sort of this play that we were doing together and like a collaboration between us, I noticed that it was difficult for her, and that actually got me really excited to sort of dig a bit deeper into that feeling and question how could I actually portray that feeling in my images. I had so many ideas during this chapter, because I love going to flea markets, and whenever I would go to a flea market, I would see so many great props, attires, just like different dresses and suits and even like wigs. So I felt that there were so many things that I could really invest in, but I knew that funding was something that this project definitely required. Now, 5 years later, I actually received multiple fundings from Kabk Foundation and multiple other organizations. And the project itself became a series around the topic of older women and their lack of freedom to express themselves fully. And whenever I was portraying my mother in these pictures, I couldn't help but to think that I was also portraying myself. So whatever I decided to capture her in, I understood that I had to direct the question upon myself and ask, would I be okay with this if I would be her age? And the more we proceeded with the project, I understood that we are actually always slowly and maybe even inevitably becoming our parents. And this was obviously a painful realization. When you're gaining more years and seeing your parents getting older, you notice these connections that you have. And one of the things is definitely things to do with their character and the way they come out as people. This project has now developed into over 300 pictures, and at the moment I'm also working on producing a photo book around the project. I have been able to exhibit this work in multiple locations in Finland but also abroad. There's so many ideas that I still have about this project, and I'm trying to little by little really go into that direction. And after starting to read this Artist's Way book, which I mentioned in my previous video, I'm having so many intuitive nudges about the characters that I want to create, and also just all sorts of like visual ideas that I want to conceptualize into these images. But of course, as fun as our project with my mother is, there's always disagreements and frustration about the project. But I have to say that starting this project with her has definitely provided a lot of experiences to us, and also just really brought us closer as mother and a daughter. And the whole project has taken us to multiple places that we would have not visited otherwise. And overall, I feel like it was such a divine intervention that I decided to start this project, and I'm so grateful about it every day. And the more deeper we go with the project, the more I invite my mother to participate in the images. Whenever we go to flea markets, which my mother doesn't really like, but I always just drag her to go with me, she has started to look for different props that we can, build the imagery around. And she always comes up with different characters, which we then discuss and think about how we could actually build that image. So yeah, it's been an intense roller coaster, and I feel like it's getting better by the day, because the more we work on this, the more it becomes this collaboration between us. And this doesn't mean that I never photograph anything else. I still have my Pentax, and I always carry it with me wherever I go. This is like my go-to camera, and I've been using this for years. I maybe paid like $10 for it, so it has been my biggest investment. But definitely this project has been a life-changing experience and decision for me. I feel like as a photographer and artist, we sometimes need more time to understand what we want to do, and photographing something on a surface level might leave the storytelling to be really thin in the pictures. So in that sense, this has been the right project for me, and I cannot really wait for all the years that are to come in this project.